you very much. I'm going to yield the remainder of my time and now recognize the gentleperson from Arizona, Ms. Lesko.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question is for Mr. Hultquist. Hello, sir. I have a couple questions into one. Basically, how well do you think the industry uses ISAC, the information, where you share information with the industry? And my secondary question is, what are the risks from insider threats?
I have actually previously worked at a couple of the ISACs, actually the Surface Transportation and Public Transit ISAC. I worked there briefly before moving into a cyber world. They've made a lot of great strides in the cyberspace, and several of them are very mature and are making a big difference. One of the problems, though, is that we sometimes take this myopic view of our sector, and we fail to see threats coming because we are overly focused on just our own sector. And it's important to look at our own sector, but the actor who turned out the lights in Ukraine was also targeting air and rail and all these other sectors, not because the lights were particularly. Sometimes if we focus too much that way, we can kind of miss that. I'm sorry, your second question?
What is the risk of insider threats, like people that are working for, let's say, the rail system or passenger rail?
Many of
pipelines.
Many of the major critical infrastructure incidents that we've seen throughout history have involved a insider component. A contractor who didn't get hired on is upset about their situation and decided to lock things up. Or I believe there was a situation where they pumped toxic stuff into a critical infrastructure.
And what can be done about it, do you think?
Probably a more complex or a more robust vetting process, and recognition that when people move in and out of an organization, security measures need to be sort of re-looked at, particularly do they still have accesses, things of that nature.
Thank you, sir. My next question is for the gentleman with the rail system. And you had mentioned, I read this article that was in I think it was the Washington Post, entitled, "Could a Chinese-made metro car spy on us?" And I think you were quoted in this. And some of the transit authorities in this article, the Chicago Transit Authority, the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, they basically said that none of the critical software components were being produced in China. What are your thoughts on that? Are they misspoken? They said that they're considering bids from CRRC, but that the critical software components are not made in China. And in fact, one of them, the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority spokesman, said the design process for new rail cars includes a cybersecurity analysis based on a U.S. Department of Defense military system safety standard. So I'm glad that we're bringing this up because I think it's a legitimate concern, but it seems like, at least from these people's spokesmen, that the critical infrastructure is not made in China. Can you comment?
Yes. What I would say to that is that our concern is you can try to mitigate, and we heard from Ms. Proctor earlier that the cyber concerns are ever evolving. We do know that, I don't know all the parts or the list of the parts, but many parts are being made in China. The shells for Los Angeles and for Boston are being made in China and shipped to Springfield, Massachusetts. So our position at RSA is risk avoidance. We don't know what can be put into a shell. We don't know what technology can be hidden there. The Chinese have a long view. Attack, but we also think of it from a point of privacy. When you have access to the tunnel the CCTV? Can you get access to the Wi-Fi system? We know how they profile their own citizens, and it doesn't take a lot to leap to the fact that maybe you could do that here, especially in the metro region.
Thank you, sir. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Ms. Lesko, and I recognize the gentleman from Louisiana, Chairperson Rich.